Red light. A long, impatient red light. Sweaty morning in Lagos. The sun had barely climbed into the sky, yet it was already unforgiving, pressing down on the backs of commuters, bouncing off windshields, soaking shirts in quiet discomfort. Maria wiped her forehead with the back of her hand and adjusted the grip on the bicycle handles. Her bicycle. Not a car, not a taxi. A slightly rusty blue bicycle with a child seat fastened at the back. Behind her, 5-year-old Favor swung her tiny legs gently, humming a nursery rhyme in a soft, innocent voice that didn't yet understand what struggle meant. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Maria checked the traffic light again. Still red. Her heart was racing faster than the ticking pedestrian countdown. She was late. Late for her shift at the hospital. Late again. One more warning from administration, and they might cut her salary. And salary was not something she could afford to lose. Car horns blared. Danfu bosses grumbled. Street hawkers weaved between vehicles, shouting prices of bottled water and plantain chips. Then, a shadow fell over them. Smooth, quiet, expensive. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom glided to a stop beside her bicycle. The kind of car that didn't just move, it arrived. Maria didn't look. She couldn't afford to look. Her world was survival, not luxury. But Favor stopped humming. Silence. Complete silence. The window of the Rolls-Royce began to roll down slowly, smoothly, deliberately. Favor's little fingers tightened around the sides of the child seat. Her breathing changed. Maria noticed. She turned slightly. Favor, what is it? The window came down halfway. A man sat in the passenger seat. Sharp jawline, tailored suit, wristwatch that probably cost more than Maria's yearly salary. He looked forward casually at first. Then he turned. His eyes met the child's. Favor froze. Her lips parted. Her tiny brows pulled together in confusion. Then, recognition. She whispered, "Daddy." Maria's heart skipped. "What did you say?" Then Favor screamed, "Daddy!" The man in the Rolls-Royce stiffened. Maria turned fully this time. Their eyes met. And in that split second, 5 years of silence crashed between them. Recognition, shock, regret, unfinished sentences, unanswered calls, broken promises. Henry. The light turned green. Cars behind them exploded into angry honks. Maria's face hardened instantly. Without another word, she pushed the pedal with force and sped forward into the traffic. Her heart was no longer racing for lateness. It was racing from the past. Inside the Rolls-Royce, Henry leaned forward urgently. "Follow that bicycle." The driver hesitated. "Sir?" "Follow her." And just like that, the red light that once stopped traffic had turned green, but it opened wounds that were never healed.
If this opening already has your heart beating, if you want to know why did Henry disappear, did he abandon her willingly, why did Favor recognize him instantly, and what will Maria do now that the past is standing beside her at a traffic light, then this story is about to take you on a journey you will never forget. Make sure you subscribe, turn on your notifications, and stay till the very end, because some red lights don't stop your destiny, they reveal it.
Let me tell you how Maria's world first began to fall apart. 5 years before the traffic light, before the bicycle, before the silence that followed her like a shadow. Maria was not tired. She was not struggling. She was not afraid. She was a final-year medical student, brilliant, focused, unshakable. In the halls of the university teaching hospital, her name carried weight. When lecturers asked difficult questions, heads would slowly turn in her direction. "Maria, can you explain the pathophysiology?" She would stand calmly, adjust her white coat, and speak in clear, steady sentences. "Yes, sir. The condition begins when the cells lose their regulatory control. That leads to abnormal proliferation, which then affects surrounding tissues." Her voice never shook. Her notes were always complete, her handwriting neat, her diagrams precise. Maria came from wealth, real wealth, the kind that built tall gates and quiet compounds, the kind that employed drivers and housekeepers, the kind that valued reputation more than comfort. Her father was a respected businessman, disciplined, controlled, feared. Her mother was elegant, soft-spoken in public, firm at home. From childhood, expectations were placed on Maria's shoulders like a crown she never asked to wear. "You are not ordinary," her father would say at the dinner table, his voice firm but calm. "You carry our name." "I understand, Daddy," she would reply politely. "Average is an insult. If you must do something, you must do it better than everyone." "Yes, Daddy." Failure was never discussed. Mistakes were corrected immediately. Mediocrity was unacceptable. When Maria gained admission into medical school, her father did not smile widely. He only nodded once. "Good, that is what we expected." But that small nod meant everything to her. Every holiday when she returned home, her mother would sit with her in the living room. "How are your grades?" "They are good, Mummy." "How good?" "Top 5 in my class." Her mother would lean forward. "Next time, aim for top 1. Maria would nod. "Yes, Mummy." And she would go back to school determined to do exactly that. By final year, she had achieved it. Top of her class. Her lecturers admired her discipline. One afternoon during ward rounds, a senior consultant stopped walking and looked at her carefully. "Young lady, what is your name again?" "Maria Adeyemi, sir." He nodded slowly. "You think like a doctor already. Do not lose that." Her heart swelled with pride. "Thank you, sir." She wrote that sentence down later in her notebook. She kept it as motivation. Her life was structured, planned, clear. Wake up, study, attend lectures, clinical rounds, library, study again. There was no room for distraction. Her father called every Sunday evening. "Maria." "Good evening, Daddy." "How is school?" "Very well, sir." "Remember why you are there." "Yes, sir." "I am investing in your future. Do not disappoint me." "I won't, Daddy." And she truly believed she never would. Her classmates went to parties. Maria went to the anatomy lab. They discussed fashion. She discussed surgical techniques. They talked about relationships. She talked about research papers. It happened on an ordinary afternoon. Not dramatic, not magical, just ordinary. Maria was in the medical library, surrounded by tall shelves and silence so deep you could hear pages turning across the room. Her table was covered with textbooks, surgery, internal medicine, pharmacology. Sticky notes marked almost every page. She was revising cardiovascular disorders when a shadow fell across her book. "Excuse me," a calm male voice said softly. "Are you using this chair?" Maria did not look up immediately. "No." "Thank you." The chair pulled out gently. No scraping, no noise. Whoever he was, he respected quiet spaces. A few minutes passed. Maria kept reading. Then she noticed something unusual. The stranger beside her was not scrolling on his phone. He was not yawning. He was not distracted. He was studying. Seriously. She allowed herself a brief glance. He was tall, dark-skinned, neatly dressed in a simple shirt with sleeves rolled halfway. His hair was low-cut and clean, his jawline sharp but calm. There was something composed about him. He felt her glance and turned slightly, offering a small, polite smile. "Final year?" he whispered.
She hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Same. His voice was soft, not loud, not proud. I've seen you answer questions in class, he added quietly. You explained things clearly. Maria blinked. She was not used to compliments. I just read a lot, she said. He smiled faintly. It shows. That was how it began. Not with fireworks, not with flirting, just two serious medical students sharing silence. The next day, he was there again. Same time, same seat beside her. You always sit here? Yes. Good. I'll know where to find you. She raised her eyebrow slightly. Why would you need to find me? He closed his textbook gently. Because you understand cardiology better than anyone I know. She almost smiled. Almost. His name was Henry. She learned it 2 days later when he extended his hand after a long study session. I'm Henry. She looked at his hand for a second before shaking it. Maria. I know, he said. She frowned lightly. How? You came first in surgery. He said it simply, not mockingly, just fact. Weeks passed. They began studying together. At first, it was purely academic. They quizzed each other, challenged each other, corrected each other. You missed that step, Maria would say, pointing at his notes. Henry would lean closer. Show me. She would explain patiently. He would listen carefully, not defensive, not dismissive. He respected her mind. That was new.
She paused. I like saving things. Things? He teased gently. She exhaled. People. He smiled softly. That makes sense. They began sharing small pieces of themselves. His childhood stories, her strict upbringing, his dreams of specializing abroad, her determination to make her parents proud. Late-night study sessions grew longer. They began bringing coffee for each other. You'll need this, he would say, placing a cup beside her notes. Thank you, she would reply, trying not to smile too much. One night, during exam week, she grew unusually quiet. He noticed immediately. What's wrong? He asked gently. Nothing. Maria. The way he said her name made it difficult to lie. She stared at her textbook, but was not reading. What if I fail? She whispered. Henry leaned back slightly surprised. You fail? She looked at him, vulnerable for the first time. I can't disappoint them. His voice softened. You won't. You don't know that. I do, he said firmly, because you don't quit. Her throat tightened unexpectedly. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Not as a project, not as an expectation, but as a person. From that night, something shifted. They still studied, still discussed cases, still debated diagnoses, but there was warmth now. When their fingers brushed while reaching for the same pen, neither pulled away immediately. When he laughed, she found herself watching him. When she smiled, he noticed. You should do that more often, he said once. Do what? Smile. She looked away quickly. Focus, Henry. He chuckled softly. Yes, doctor. Their love did not explode into existence. It grew quietly. In shared glances, in soft conversations, in protective walks, in whispered encouragement during long nights. Somewhere between pharmacology notes and surgical case reviews, between rain tapping on windows and coffee growing cold, their study sessions turned into something deeper. Not loud, not reckless, just two hearts slowly choosing each other in the quiet corners of ambition. Maria noticed her cycle was late. At first, she ignored it. Stress, she told herself. Final year stress, lack of sleep, too much coffee. She had been studying intensely. Her body was probably just tired. It's nothing, she whispered to herself one morning as she dressed for lectures. But days passed, then a week. A quiet unease began to settle in her chest. She found herself counting dates repeatedly, recalculating, hoping she had miscounted. She had not. One afternoon after lectures, she stood in front of a small pharmacy a few streets away from campus. She stared at the glass door for a long time before entering. Her palms were slightly sweaty. "Good afternoon," the pharmacist said casually. "Good afternoon," she replied, trying to sound normal. Her voice almost betrayed her. I need a test kit." The pharmacist did not ask questions. He simply reached behind the counter and handed it to her. The walk back to her hostel felt longer than usual. Every sound around her felt louder. Every passing face felt like it knew something. Inside her room, she locked the door. She placed the small box on her desk and stared at it. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. "It's just to rule it out," she muttered. Her hands trembled slightly as she followed the instructions. Then she waited. Those few minutes felt like hours. She paced, she sat, she stood again. "Please," she whispered, though she did not know who she was speaking to. When she finally looked down at the test strip, her world tilted. 2 lines, clear, unmistakable, positive. She stared at it in disbelief. No, this can't be." She blinked repeatedly as if the lines would disappear. They did not. Her breathing became shallow, her chest tightened. She sat down slowly on the edge of her bed. 1,000 thoughts rushed at once. Final exams, her father, her mother, the family name, the expectations, the future. Henry. She grabbed her phone immediately. Her fingers shook as she dialed his number. It rang. Once. Twice. 3 times. No answer.
"Pick up," she muttered. It stopped ringing. She tried again. This time it rang longer. Then voicemail. "Henry, please call me back," she said quickly, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's important." She ended the call and stared at her phone. Maybe he was in class. Maybe he was busy. She waited 10 minutes, then called again. No answer. A cold feeling crept into her stomach. She sent a message. "Henry, we need to talk. It's urgent." The message delivered. No reply. She barely slept that night. Every vibration from her phone made her jump. None of them were from him. The next morning, she called again. This time, the call did not ring. It went straight to a recorded voice. "The number you were trying to reach is not available." She frowned. She tried again. Same message. Her heart began to race. No. She quickly put on her sandals and hurried out of her hostel. She walked fast, then faster, then almost ran. His hostel was only a few minutes away. She climbed the stairs 2 at a time and stopped in front of his door. She knocked. No answer. She knocked harder. "Henry!" Silence. A nearby door opened. Another student peered out. "Who are you looking for?" "Henry," she said quickly. "He stays here." The student frowned slightly. "You didn't hear?" Her stomach dropped. "Hear what?" "He left yesterday." The words felt distant. "Left?" "Yeah, packed up, said he was traveling." Maria stared at him. "Traveling where?" He shrugged. "No idea. It was sudden." She turned back to Henry's door. The small name tag that once hung beside it was gone. She tried the handle gently. Locked. She pressed her forehead against the cold wood. "No," she whispered again. She dialed his number one more time. "The number you were trying to reach is not available." Her fingers slowly dropped from the phone. The corridor suddenly felt too narrow, too quiet, too empty. She stepped back and looked around as if he might appear from nowhere. He didn't. No goodbye, no explanation, no warning, just silence. She walked down the stairs slowly, her legs weak beneath her.
Outside, the campus was moving as usual, students laughing, lecturers walking past, life continuing. But for Maria, something had stopped. She placed a trembling hand over her stomach unconsciously. Inside her was proof of love. Outside her was absence. Henry was gone, his calls unanswered, his number unreachable, his room empty. He had vanished.
Maria delayed going home as long as she could. But secrets have weight, and weight eventually bends the strongest shoulders. Her mother had called twice that week. "You sound tired," she had said over the phone. "Are you sleeping well?" "I'm fine, Mummy," Maria replied quickly. But she was not fine. The morning sickness had started, the nausea, the dizziness. She could not hide it forever. So she traveled home that weekend. The house stood tall and proud behind its high gates, just as it always had. The compound was quiet, perfect, orderly, a place where mistakes did not belong. When she stepped inside, her mother noticed immediately. "Maria, you look pale." "I'm just stressed," she replied softly. Her mother studied her face longer than usual. Later that evening, while setting the table for dinner, Maria suddenly felt the room spin. She gripped the edge of a chair. A glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Her father looked up sharply from the head of the table. "What is the meaning of that?" Maria pressed her hand to her mouth and rushed toward the bathroom. Her mother followed. "Maria!" The door closed. Silence. Then the unmistakable sound of vomiting. Her mother froze. When Maria finally stepped out, her face was drained of color. Her mother's eyes searched hers, not casually, not gently, carefully. "How long?" she asked quietly. Maria's heart pounded. "Mummy, how long?" Her voice was firmer now. Tears gathered in Maria's eyes. She could not speak at first. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, "A few weeks." Her mother stepped back slowly, as if struck. "No," she murmured. "No, you are not saying what I think you are saying." Maria's voice trembled. "I didn't plan it." "Who?" The single word felt heavy. Maria swallowed. "Henry." The silence that followed was suffocating. Her mother turned away. She did not scream. She did not cry. She simply walked out of the room. Maria's father was still seated at the dining table when her mother returned alone. He looked up. "Where is she?" Her mother's voice was low. "Ask your daughter what she has done." He frowned and stood up. "Maria!" She walked back into the dining area slowly. Each step felt like judgment. Her father stared at her. "What is your mother talking about?" Maria could not lift her head. "Answer me." She forced the words out. "I'm pregnant." The sound that followed was sudden and violent. His palm slammed against the wooden dining table so hard the cutlery rattled. "What did you say?" His voice shook the room. "I'm pregnant," she repeated faintly. He rose to his full height. Rage burned in his eyes. "You have disgraced this family." The words struck harder than any slap. "After everything we have done for you, after the money, the reputation, the sacrifices." Maria's tears fell freely now. "Daddy, I'm sorry." "Sorry?" He laughed bitterly. "Sorry does not erase shame."
Her mother stood a few steps away, arms folded tightly across her chest. She did not look at Maria, not once. "Is this why we sent you to school?" her father demanded. "To bring this embarrassment into my house?" "It wasn't supposed to happen," Maria whispered. "Where is the boy?" He left." "Left?" His eyes widened with disbelief.
So not only are you are pregnant for a coward? Maria flinched. Her father turned away from her, pacing. Do you know what people will say? He thundered. Do you understand what this means for our name? She tried to step closer. Daddy, please, don't call me that. His voice cut through her like a blade. The room fell into a terrible silence. Finally, he spoke again. You will not bring this shame under my roof. Maria's breath caught. Sir? Her mother's voice was cold when she spoke. Pack your things. Maria turned toward her, desperate. Mummy, please look at me. But her mother kept her eyes fixed ahead, distant, closed. You made your choice, she said quietly. Now live with it. Maria's knees felt weak. Where am I supposed to go? She asked, her voice breaking. Her father's answer was firm. Anywhere but here. Tears blurred her vision as she walked to her room. She packed in silence. A few clothes, some books, her certificates, the life she once knew shrinking into a small suitcase. When she returned to the living room, her parents were still standing there, unmoved, unsoftened. She stood before them one last time. I am still your daughter. Her voice weakened. Her father did not respond. Her mother still refused to meet her eyes. The front door opened. The night air rushed in. Maria stepped outside with her suitcase in one hand and her other hand resting unconsciously on her stomach. Behind her, the door closed. And just like that, she was no longer the pride of the family. She was the shame they had sent away. Maria's final year of medical school was nothing like she had imagined. It was harder, much harder. Every morning she awoke before dawn. Her stomach ached. Her body betrayed her with waves of nausea. Her hand sometimes shook as she scribbled notes. But still she studied. Still she went to lectures. Classmates whispered. They say Maria is carrying and still coming to class, one murmured in the library. She must be crazy, another replied softly, eyes darting around. Maria overheard. She kept her head down. She did not answer. She had no time for gossip. She had exams to pass, lives to learn how to save. Lecturers judged. Maria, one said during rounds, are you certain you are fit for this? I am, sir, she replied steadily, swallowing the nausea rising in her throat. I've been attending every lecture. I've completed every practical. He frowned. Just be careful. She nodded. Careful was all she could be. She nearly collapsed during rounds once. Her legs buckled as she examined a patient. A nurse caught her, steadying her with firm hands. Are you all right, Miss Adeyemi? I'm fine, Maria gasped, gripping the edge of the bed. She took a deep breath, straightened her back, and forced a smile. She could not stop. Not now. Not ever. Late nights blended into early mornings. Coffee became a constant companion. Notes piled up around her. Her body ached, but her mind sharpened. Every time doubt crept in, she placed her hand over her growing belly and whispered, we can do this. We will do this. And then the day came. The graduation ceremony. White coat pressed, hair neat, face tired but proud. Her parents were absent. Her classmates murmured as she walked across the stage. Whispers, judgments, but she did not falter. She had made it. She had survived. She had won. A few weeks later, she held her newborn in her arms, tiny fingers curling around hers, soft, perfect skin, a beautiful baby girl. She looked down at the child and felt a surge of hope. Favor, she whispered. You are my favor. Because despite everything, the rejection, the struggle, the heartache,
She believed her child was grace. She believed her child was a gift. And in that small life, Maria found the strength to keep going. Maria's life had changed, but it had not broken her. She was now a junior doctor, freshly out of medical school, working at a modest hospital on the outskirts of Lagos. It was not the prestigious place she had dreamed of. The walls were plain, some of the equipment was old, the lights sometimes flickered. Yet, every time she stepped through the hospital doors, she reminded herself why she had endured everything. She was saving lives. She was making a difference. Her home, too, reflected her new reality. She lived in a small rented apartment, a single room with a kitchenette squeezed in one corner, a small living space cluttered with books, baby clothes, and a tiny crib. The rent was manageable, the neighbors polite but distant. Maria had learned to appreciate simplicity. She cooked modest meals on her tiny stove. She cleaned meticulously. She decorated with little touches, a small vase of flowers on the windowsill, a framed photograph of her graduation, a colorful drawing Favor had made. Every morning began early, too early some would say. She would wake before the sun, shower quickly, dress in her crisp white coat, and prepare breakfast for Favor. The little girl was always bright-eyed, impatient to start the day. Maria often carried her daughter on her bicycle as they made their way to school. It was not the safest method, it was not the most comfortable, but it was all she could afford. Favor clung to her with his small backpack bouncing against her back, humming a nursery rhyme even before the streets were busy. "Slow down, Mommy," Favor would call out as they maneuvered through Lagos traffic. "I'm trying, darling," Maria replied, weaving carefully between cars and street hawkers. They stopped at a small private school. It was not fancy. The playground was modest. The classrooms were simple, but the teachers were kind. Maria lifted Favor off the bicycle, hugged her tightly, and kissed her forehead. "Be good today, Favor," Maria said softly. "I will, Mommy. Can I ask you something?" "Of course, darling, anything." Favor's eyes were wide, curious. "Mommy, where is my daddy?" Maria froze for a brief moment. She placed a hand over Favor's small one and smiled gently. "He lives far away, sweetheart," she said, keeping her voice soft and steady. "Far away." Favor tilted her head. "Will I see him someday?" Maria hesitated. "I don't know, darling, but we are together, and that's what matters most." Favor nodded slowly, but her eyes remained thoughtful. Maria released her and watched her skip into the school compound. She felt a pang of sadness, a whisper of what could have been. After dropping Favor off, Maria mounted her bicycle again and rode toward the hospital. The streets were already alive with people rushing to work, cars honking, motorcycles swerving. Her heart beat fast, not just from the ride, but from the exhaustion she carried every day. She reminded herself silently, focus. She was a doctor now. She had responsibilities. Lives depended on her. During her lunch break, she would sometimes sit alone in a quiet corner, eating the simple food she had packed. She never let herself linger on the past too long. But there was one secret she could not let go, one thing she carried with her wherever she went. Deep inside her handbag, tucked carefully behind her wallet, was a photograph, faded slightly at the edges. Henry's face smiling back at her. The same man who had disappeared, leaving her alone. The same man who never answered her calls, whose number had vanished, whose room was empty when she searched. She would pull it out sometimes when she needed courage, sometimes when Favor asked questions she could not answer. She would stare at it quietly, whispering softly to herself, "You may be far away, Henry, but I will not forget. I will carry this for both of us." Some days were easier, some days were harder. Favor's curiosity never ceased. "Mommy, why do I have no daddy at school?" she asked again one morning as they mounted the bicycle. Maria's heart ached, but she smiled and squeezed her daughter's hand. He is far away, darling. One day we will understand why, but for now we have each other." The ride continued. Cars honked, hawkers called out, the Lagos sun beat down. Maria's legs pumped steadily on the pedals, her back straight, her mind focused, her heart heavy but determined. She was a mother, she was a doctor, she was carrying the weight of the past, the present, and the future, all in her arms, in her heart, and in the small photograph that never left her side. And in that moment, as the city roared around her, Maria silently promised herself again, no matter how hard life became, no matter how lonely the road, she would protect favor. She would provide, she would endure, because love, determination, and hope, those were stronger than absence, stronger than judgment, stronger than betrayal. And she would not let either her child or herself be broken.
By the time she arrived at the modest hospital, sweat drenched her blouse and her hair stuck to her forehead. She dismounted the bicycle quickly, tugged Favor's hand to the side, and ran toward the main building. The receptionist gave her a questioning look, but Maria only nodded quickly. "Dr. Adeyemi, emergency," she muttered, brushing past with purpose. She barely had a moment to breathe. Today was important. The hospital director was visiting, a senior official from the state medical board. She had prepared for weeks. Cases reviewed, notes ready, presentations memorized. She had to compose herself. She wiped her sweaty palms on her white coat, smoothed the front, and took a deep breath. "Focus, Maria," she whispered under her breath. "You are a doctor. You can do this." The conference room was just ahead. She stepped inside quickly, arranging her notes, placing her medical files neatly on the polished table. The room was already filling with a few staff members and assistants, all murmuring softly as they waited. She tried to straighten her spine, to force calm into her breathing. And then the door opened. Henry. The man who had vanished from her life years ago, the man who had abandoned her when she had needed him most, the man who for so long existed only in memories, in the photograph tucked carefully in her handbag. He was older now, sharper, confident, wealthy. His presence filled the room instantly. Not a word, not a sound, just Henry, standing tall and composed, eyes scanning the room. His gaze landed on her. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Maria's heart dropped to her stomach, her chest tightened. She wanted to step back, to run, to hide, but she was a doctor. She had patients, she had responsibilities. She forced herself to remain standing, clutching her notebook with trembling hands. Henry walked slowly across the table, his polished shoes making soft taps against the floor. Staff turned their heads, whispering to each other. None dared speak. Even the director, seated at the far end, looked momentarily distracted. Maria's mind raced. Why is he here? How? Why? She tried to compose herself, to breathe slowly, to remind herself that she was professional, that she could handle this. She wiped her sweaty palms on her white coat, adjusted her hair, and cleared her throat. "Good morning," she said softly, her voice tighter than she intended. Henry's eyes did not move from hers. "Good morning, Dr. Adeyemi," he said, his voice calm, smooth, deliberate. The weight of recognition hung in every syllable. The director, oblivious to the tension, began introductions. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Henry Olatunde, the owner of this hospital. He has taken a personal interest in the facility's operations and will be observing today's proceedings." Maria's hands tightened around her notebook. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Henry, the man who had once been only a memory, was the owner.
He had been there, right there all along, overseeing her work, walking the same halls she had pedaled her bicycle to every morning. Her colleagues exchanged glances. Whispers rose, careful, curious. Maria kept her head high, but her mind spun. She wanted to ask 100 questions. Why now? Why show up here? Did he know? Could he see favor? Did he remember? Did he regret? Henry moved closer to the table, his eyes still locked on hers. Recognition, shock, regret, anger. All of it flashed in a fraction of a second, unspoken, unsaid, yet electric in the space between them.
Maria forced a calmness she did not feel. "Mr. Olatunde," she said carefully, keeping her voice steady, "welcome to our hospital." He nodded slightly. "Thank you, Dr. Adeyemi. I've heard a lot about your work." His tone was polite, professional, but she could hear the undercurrent, something personal, something that reached beyond titles and hospital protocol. Her chest tightened further. Her hands ached from gripping her notebook. Every lesson in professionalism, every day of surviving whispers and judgments felt like it was being tested in a single heartbeat. The director continued the introductions, oblivious to the tension. Maria tried to focus on the agenda, on her prepared notes, but Henry's presence was magnetic, impossible to ignore. He was there, watching, seeing, judging perhaps in his own way. And for a moment the hour felt smaller, the air heavier. Every breath she took reminded her of the years lost, the pain, the abandonment. Yet she stood there, poised, a doctor, a mother, a woman who had survived everything life had thrown at her. And Henry, he was finally back. The silence stretched, broken only by the shuffling of papers, the quiet murmur of staff, and the unspoken words hovering in the air. Maria's heart thudded against her ribs, and for the first time in years, she realized she was not ready for what would come next. Not yet. But there was no turning back now. Maria barely breathed as she followed the receptionist's directions to the private office. Her heart was still racing from the morning's chaos, the traffic light encounter, the sudden presence of Henry in the hospital, the stares from colleagues. Every step felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were pressing down on her. She clutched her notebook tightly, twisting the edges of the cover between her fingers. She told herself to stay calm, to act professional, to remember that she was a doctor first, a mother always, and a woman who refused to crumble under old wounds. And Henry, he was finally back. The office door opened, and Henry was already there. He rose from behind a massive mahogany desk, polished to a sheen that reflected the sunlight streaming through the tall windows. His expression was controlled but intense, eyes locked on her the moment she stepped inside. "Maria," his voice was quiet, deliberate, pleading even. "Please, let me explain." She froze. His presence still had power over her, a power she had fought to forget. Memories of pain, betrayal, and abandonment flickered through her mind. The image of the small suitcase, the empty hostel, the unanswered calls, all of it came rushing back. "You disappeared," she said finally, her voice sharper than she intended. "You left me. You left me alone." He winced slightly at her words. "I know. No," Maria interrupted, her voice stronger now. I can't do this. Not with you here." She swallowed hard, and turned toward her bag. Her fingers dug into the strap, pulling out the resignation letter she had drafted weeks ago in quiet despair. "I resign," she said firmly, placing the letter on the desk. "Effective immediately. I cannot work here while you're here." Henry's hand shot out, resting lightly but firmly over hers on the desk. "Maria, please don't do this. Don't leave, not like this." She pulled back instinctively. "I can't. I won't. You vanished. You have no right. Give me 5 minutes." His voice was low, almost desperate, but it carried an intensity that made her pause. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Let me explain everything. Let me tell you the truth." Maria shook her head. Her eyes filled with a mixture of anger, hurt, and disbelief. "I don't want your excuses. You left me when I needed you. You left me when I was carrying—" She broke slightly, but she forced herself to finish. "Carrying favor. You disappeared without a word. And now you expect me to listen?" "I know," he said softly. "I know I have no right. But I'm asking, not demanding. 5 minutes, Maria. That's all. Let me show you who I am now. Let me—" "I said no," she interrupted again, her voice stronger now, tinged with finality. She picked up her bag and the resignation letter and turned toward the door. Her footsteps were deliberate, measured, each one echoing slightly against the polished floor. "Maria!" Henry's voice followed her, but she did not stop. "Please, don't walk away without hearing me." She reached the door, her hand on the handle, and paused just for a second. Her back was to him. Her heart still raced. Her mind still battled between old wounds and the instinct to protect herself and her daughter. She tightened her grip on the bag. "I am walking out," she said over her shoulder. "I have made my decision. You will not manipulate me. Not today, not ever." She opened the door and stepped into the hallway, the office door closing softly behind her. Henry remained standing inside, silent, his hand hovering over the desk where her resignation letter lay untouched. The sunlight caught the edges of the paper, a reminder that she had made her choice. Maria walked down the corridor, each step deliberate. Her chest heaved with suppressed emotion, her fingers clenched around her bag strap. She did not look back. She could not. Not yet. Henry's voice whispered after her once more, soft and desperate. "Maria, please." But the words faded into the background hum of the hospital. She forced herself to focus on the tasks ahead, favor waiting at school, patience depending on her, the life she had built despite betrayal and abandonment. She would not give him a chance, not yet, until she was ready. And with that, Maria walked on, leaving behind the private office, the wealth, the questions, and the man who had once been everything, and now was a storm she had no intention of facing just yet. The apartment was quiet that evening, the soft hum of the ceiling fan the only sound above the distant noise of Lagos streets. Maria had just returned from the hospital. Her legs were tired from standing for hours, her back ached from bending over patients, and her mind was still reeling from the events of the morning. The traffic light encounter, Henry's sudden presence, the confrontation in his office, it all pressed on her chest like a weight she could not lift. Favor was sitting at the small wooden table in the corner, her schoolbook spread out in front of her. Her little head was bent over her homework, her pencil scratching across the page, but her eyes kept darting toward Maria. Finally, she set the pencil down, pushed the notebook aside, and looked up at her mother. "Mummy?" she asked softly, forcing calm into her tone, though her heart leapt suddenly. "Yes, darling? I saw Daddy today." The words hit Maria like a thunderclap. Her chest tightened, her palms grew sweaty, her stomach churned. She froze mid-step, her hand resting on the edge of the counter as if holding herself up.
"What do you mean?" she managed to say, her voice trembling just slightly. Favor's little eyes were wide. "I saw him at the traffic light," she said simply. "He was in a big car. He looked like he knew me." Maria's throat tightened. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain calm. "Oh, really, darling?" she said, keeping her voice steady, too steady. "That must have been exciting to see someone on the road." Favor frowned slightly. "Mummy, I know him. I know his face." Maria stopped moving entirely, her heart dropping further. She could feel her pulse in her ears. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "I saw a picture of him," Favor said, her voice soft, almost matter-of-fact. "In your bag. I saw it once. I memorized his face." Maria's knees nearly buckled. She had forgotten for a moment that her daughter had a memory sharper than her years suggested. That photograph, folded carefully and tucked away in her handbag, had been a secret, a memory she had hoped to keep hidden until the day she could explain it properly, or perhaps until that day never came. But Favor had seen it. And now, years later, that memory had returned to her daughter in the most real, undeniable way. "He looks kind," Favor said after a pause, smiling faintly. "Really kind, Mummy. Like he would help people." Maria felt something shatter inside her. It was not anger. It was not guilt. It was a wave of emotions she could not contain. Relief, fear, sadness, regret. The tears came quietly at first, slipping down her cheeks while she tried to speak, while she tried to explain, while she tried to steady her shaking hands. I, she whispered, but no words could capture the storm inside her. She knelt down in front of Favor, pulling her into her arms tightly. Her daughter smelled like soap and school books, a smell that reminded Maria of hope, of innocence, of all she had fought to protect. "I'm sorry, darling," she murmured into her daughter's hair. "I didn't mean for you to know. Not yet." Favor looked up at her mother with wide, innocent eyes. "It's okay, Mummy. I like him. I hope he's nice to you." Maria forced a smile through her tears. He's complicated, Favor. Very complicated." But Favor only nodded, as if understanding more than she could. She leaned against Maria, still small, still tender, still completely trusting. And in that moment, Maria realized something. Her child had already forgiven in a way she could not. Her daughter had seen the good she wanted to see. She had believed in the good. That night, after Favor had fallen asleep, curled up under the thin blanket Maria had tucked around her, Maria sat quietly in the small apartment, staring at the faint glow of the streetlight filtering through the window. She pulled the photograph of Henry from her handbag, now trembling in her hands, and traced his face with her fingers. Tears fell silently. No one saw them. No one heard them. She cried for the years lost. She cried for the pain. She cried for the child she had carried alone, and for the man who had vanished, leaving memories and a photograph as the only traces of what could have been. Yet, beneath the sorrow, there was something else, a fragile, hesitant hope, because Favor had seen the good. She had recognized it before Maria could explain. And for Maria, that quiet understanding, that innocence, became a lifeline. Even in her sorrow, she whispered into the dark apartment, "I will protect you. I will always protect you, my Favor. And maybe, one day, things will make sense." The night stretched on, the city hummed outside, and Maria let herself weep, softly, quietly, holding on to both her daughter and the memory of what had been, of what might still be.
Henry's office was silent, the kind of silence that pressed down on Maria's chest and made it hard to breathe.
She had tried to walk away. She had refused him before, but he had followed her. Now he stood across from her, leaning slightly against the polished edge of the mahogany desk, his eyes locked on hers. There was an intensity there she could not ignore, a desperation that made her stomach twist. "Maria," he began, his voice low, almost trembling. "Please, I need you to listen. Just listen." "I've heard enough," she said sharply, stepping back. "I don't want your excuses. You disappeared. You left me. You left favor. I don't care why." He shook his head slowly, his gaze unwavering. "I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I only ask that you hear me out. Please, just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Maria hesitated. Something in his tone made her pause. It was the same man she had once loved, but older now, harder somehow, shaped by time and experience. Something in his eyes spoke of truth, or maybe it was just skillful manipulation. She swallowed hard, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "Fine," she said finally, her voice guarded. 5 minutes, that's it." Henry straightened, relief flickering across his face. Thank you. He took a deep breath, then began. "When I found out you were pregnant, my father," he jaw tightened. "My father found out. He was furious. He threatened me, threatened to ruin everything, to destroy your academic career, Maria, your exams, your future in medicine. He said he would make sure you never practiced if I didn't do as he demanded." Maria's heart pounded. Her first instinct was disbelief. "That's impossible," she said slowly. "Why would your father care about me, about my life?" "Because he is powerful," Henry said quietly, leaning closer, hands pressed against the desk. "He controls everything I touch. He's ruthless, Maria. He threatened me directly. He said if I didn't leave, if I didn't disappear immediately, he would ruin both of us. He took my passport, my phone, everything. I had no choice. I had to go abroad. They forced me. I couldn't call. I couldn't contact you. I searched for you the moment I returned, years later. I never stopped looking. Never." Maria blinked rapidly. Her chest felt tight. She wanted to believe him, desperately wanted to trust the man standing before her, but a cold voice in the back of her mind whispered warnings. Was this the truth, or a story carefully crafted to manipulate you? "You expect me to just believe that?" she said finally, her voice sharp but wavering. "After all these years, after the silence, after the pain, you disappeared without a word. And now you come back and you expect me to trust your words?" Henry's face hardened, but his eyes softened. "I don't expect you to trust me yet. I only ask for the chance to explain, to show you that I never stopped caring, that I never stopped loving you, Maria, not for a single day." Maria turned away, crossing her arms again, her fists clenching. She could feel the tears prickling her eyes, but she forced herself to stay composed. "You could have written, you could have called, anything, but you vanished. You left me to face everything alone. How do I know this story isn't just another way to control me, to make me forgive you?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a quiet, desperate plea. "I swear to you, Maria, you have my word. I never stopped loving you. Every day away from you, every day without favor in my arms, it haunted me. I searched, I waited, I planned, and now that I'm here, all I ask is that you hear me. Not forgive, not forget, just hear me." Maria's mind whirled. The truth hovered like a fragile thread. His story made sense, yet every instinct screamed caution.
Could she believe him? Could she trust him after all these years of abandonment? Or was this another trap, another way to rewrite the past and lure her into hope she could not afford? Maria could not stop thinking about Henry's words. Even after he had left the office that day, after she had walked away from him with her chest tight and her mind racing, a part of her wanted answers. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, just truth. The story he had told, the tale of his father, the threats, the sudden disappearance, she had to know if it was real. She had to know if the man who had haunted her memories for years had spoken honestly, or if he was weaving another web to ensnare her heart. She started quietly, reaching out to old classmates from medical school, people she had trusted, friends she had confided in. She asked casually, carefully, not revealing too much at first. "Do you remember Henry Olatunde?" she asked, pretending to inquire about a distant acquaintance. "Oh yes," one said, eyes widening slightly. "He just disappeared. One day he was here, attending classes, helping in the labs, and the next, gone. No notice, nothing. Everyone wondered what happened." Her pulse quickened. She asked more. Another friend nodded. "I heard his father made him leave the country. Something serious, like he couldn't refuse. I don't know the details, but yes, it was sudden. Everyone was shocked. No one saw it coming." She felt her stomach tighten. The threads of his story were beginning to form a pattern. It was not just a tale he had made up. People remembered. People confirmed. Her pulse was uneven, her chest tight, but something cautious began to stir inside her. Possibility. Next, she began to research quietly. Newspapers, articles, public records, whispers in financial and business circles. She found references to his father, a man with influence that could crush careers, close doors, control opportunities. Stories of his power, of his ability to sway institutions, of his ruthless reputation. Each article, each mention made Maria's stomach twist. She began to understand why Henry had vanished, why he had been powerless to contact her. Then she returned to Henry. She watched him carefully. She observed his eyes, the way they lingered on her face when he thought she wasn't looking, the quiet tension in his posture, the hesitation in his speech when he recounted the past. She saw regret, deep and unmistakable, etched into the lines of his face. The way his shoulders slumped, the way his gaze softened when he looked at favor. It was real. She could not deny it. Yet even as these pieces fell into place, Maria felt herself retreating emotionally. Trauma was a shadow she carried, heavier than the physical exhaustion of motherhood or work. Abandonment was a wound that refused to heal. She remembered the sleepless nights when Favor cried and Henry's absence left her utterly alone. She remembered the whispered ridicule of classmates, the judgment of lecturers, the cold silence of her family. How could she trust a man who had disappeared so completely? The park was quiet that evening. The sun was low, casting a warm golden light across the grass. Children laughed near the swings. Birds circled lazily above the trees. The air was soft, calm, almost peaceful. Maria stood a few steps behind Favor, her hands gently resting on her daughter's shoulders. Her heart was beating slowly but heavily. She had agreed to this meeting, but fear still lingered inside her. Fear of disappointment, fear of pain, fear of hope. Henry stood near a wooden bench under a large tree. He was dressed simply, not in a suit this time. No polished office, no power. Just a man, waiting, nervous. His hands clasped together tightly in front of him, his eyes searching. Favor spotted him first. "Daddy!" she shouted, suddenly, her voice bright and full of excitement. Maria's breath caught in her throat. She did not stop her. She did not call her back. She simply watched. Favor ran, small feet pounding against the grass, her braids bouncing, her laughter ringing through the quiet park. There was no hesitation in her, no doubt, no fear, only innocence, only trust. Henry froze for a second, as if he could not believe what he was seeing. Then he opened his arms, wide, completely open. Favor ran straight into him. The impact made him stagger slightly, but he held her tightly, as if afraid she might disappear. His hands wrapped around her small back, his fingers trembled, his breath broke. And then he began to cry. Not quietly, not controlled, real tears, heavy tears. His shoulders shook as he held her. He buried his face gently in her hair, breathing her in as if memorizing her scent. "I am so sorry," he whispered, his voice breaking. Favor pulled back slightly and looked at him with curious eyes. "Why are you crying?" she asked softly. He dropped to his knees in front of her, slowly, deliberately. His eyes were red now, his face wet with tears. He held her little hands in his large ones.
"I am sorry I missed your first steps," he said, his voice trembling deeply. "I am sorry I was not there when you said your first word. I am sorry I was not there to carry you when you were tired. I am sorry I missed everything." Favor tilted her head slightly. She did not fully understand the weight of his words, but she felt his emotion. She reached out her small hand and touched his cheek. "It's okay," she said gently. "You are here now." Henry closed his eyes at those words. More tears fell. He pressed his forehead lightly against her hands. "Yes, I am here now." Maria stood at a distance, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She had promised herself she would remain strong, that she would not be moved easily. But as she watched the scene unfold before her, something inside her softened. She watched the way Henry looked at Favor. There was no pride in his eyes, no ego, only love, only regret, only longing for the years he had lost. She saw sincerity. It was not loud, it was not dramatic, it was quiet and painful and honest. It was in the way his hands trembled when he touched Favor's hair. It was in the way he looked at her as if she was the most precious thing he had ever seen. Favor laughed suddenly and wrapped her arms around his neck again. "Will you push me on the swing?" she asked brightly. Henry let out a shaky laugh through his tears. "Yes," he said softly, "I will push you on the swing." Maria exhaled slowly. The tension she had carried for years loosened just slightly. Not completely, not fully, but enough. She walked a few steps closer, still silent, still cautious. Henry looked up, and their eyes met. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic words, just understanding passing quietly between them. Maria saw it clearly now, the regret, the sorrow, the love that had not died, and for the first time she did not look away.
Maria's world had shifted slowly, quietly, since Henry returned. At first, she had no words for him. His presence stirred memories she had tried to lock away. The anger, the hurt, the nights spent crying into her pillow, wondering if he had ever cared. Those feelings rose like storms every time she saw him. And yet, there he was, standing across the hospital corridor, or at the school gate, looking the same as she remembered, but with a humility that had not been there before. One evening, after a long shift, Maria walked toward the small parking lot. Henry was there again, leaning slightly against his car, his eyes soft but determined. He smiled when he saw her. "Good evening, Maria," he said gently. "Henry," she replied, her voice careful, measured. "What are you doing here again?" "I just wanted to make sure you got home safely," he said. His tone was quiet, no hint of arrogance. "Is that okay?" Maria's hand went to her bag, gripping it lightly. She studied him for a long moment. "Henry," she said finally, her voice firm, "let me be clear. If you truly want us, if you want me and favor, you don't win us with money. You don't win us with gifts or flashy gestures. You win us with consistency, with patience, with presence." Henry's eyes softened, and he nodded slowly. "I understand," he said quietly. "I will not rush you. I will not try to buy your forgiveness. I will show you, slowly, day by day, that I am here." And so the months began. At first it was small things. He appeared at school events when Favor performed, sitting quietly at the back, clapping softly, never trying to take attention away from Maria. Maria noticed, sometimes from across the playground. He always waved gently at Favor, his smile reserved but genuine. "You see him?" Maria asked one afternoon as they left school. Favor's small hand held hers tightly. "Yes, darling," Maria said. "He's being patient. That's important." Favor's eyes sparkled. "I like it when he's here, Mummy. He doesn't shout. He doesn't make me scared." Maria nodded, squeezing her daughter's hand. "I know, sweetheart. That's how it should be. That's how a father should be." Henry began waiting outside the hospital during her shifts, but never hovering. He stood quietly, leaning against a column, reading a book or checking his phone. Sometimes he brought her favorite coffee, but only when she had time to take it without words of thanks being forced. He never pressed. He never asked for explanations she wasn't ready to give. One rainy afternoon, Maria emerged from the hospital, umbrella in hand. Henry was waiting, his coat draped over his arm. "You've been standing here in the rain too long," she said, voice gentle but reproachful. "I don't mind," he replied, smiling faintly. "I wanted to be here, for you, for Favor." Maria shook her head slightly, laughing softly. "Henry, you have to understand, it's not just about showing up, it's about being here. Even when it's inconvenient, even when I'm difficult, even when Favor doesn't notice at first, that is what counts." He nodded, eyes steady on hers. "I will learn," he said. "I will be consistent. I will not stop trying."
Not grand, not flashy, just emotional. Henry had waited, patiently, every day, every moment, proving himself to Maria and Favor, and now it was time. It happened in the same hospital corridor where Maria had once tried to resign, where anger, hurt, and betrayal had hung thick in the air. That day, the corridor felt different, quiet, calm, almost sacred. Henry stood beside her desk, hands trembling slightly, a small velvet box in his hand. "Maria," he said softly, voice steady despite his nerves, "I know I cannot undo the past. I cannot erase the mistakes I made, but I want to build the future with you, with us, with favor. Maria's heart pounded. Her eyes were wide, remembering all the months of waiting, of testing, of doubt. "Henry," she whispered. He knelt. The corridor seemed to fade around them. "Will you marry me?" His voice was low but full of hope, full of sincerity. Tears welled up in Maria's eyes. She looked at him, at the man who had disappeared and returned, the man who had shown her patience, respect, and love every single day since then. She nodded, voice shaking. "Yes, yes, Henry, I will." The ceremony was small but elegant. The hospital chapel was decorated with soft white flowers, simple ribbons. Only close friends, the principal doctor, and family attended. Maria's parents sat quietly, watching their daughter. Her father cleared his throat. "Maria," he began, his voice heavy with emotion, "I was wrong about everything. I am sorry for turning you away, for not trusting you. I hope you can forgive me." Maria felt a lump in her throat. She reached for his hand. "I forgive you, Daddy. We all needed time, and now we are together." It was full circle healing. Years of pain, of anger, of absence, slowly dissolving into forgiveness and understanding. Years later, life had changed completely. Maria now sat inside the luxury car Henry had chosen, soft leather seats, polished dashboard reflecting the Lagos sun. Favor laughed in the back seat, her two braids bouncing as she tried to reach for a candy wrapper. The lights turned red. Beside them, a struggling single mother on a bicycle stopped, balancing her child on the small frame, weary yet determined. Maria's heart swelled. She recognized herself in that woman, the small suitcase, the quiet fight, the daily struggle to survive and care for a child. Maria rolled down her window, the sunlight glinting on her wedding ring. She smiled warmly at the mother, nodding gently. "Keep going," she said softly, her voice full of understanding and hope. The mother's eyes widened. A small, grateful smile appeared on her face. She nodded, steadying her bicycle, and rode on. Maria looked in the rearview mirror at Favor, whose laughter was bright and free. She realized in that moment how far they had come, from rejection, from pain, from absence, to love, security, and hope. And she knew one thing clearly: the world could still be harsh, life could still be unfair, but they had made it, together. The light turned green. The car rolled forward, and for Maria, Henry, and Favor, the journey continued, stronger, brighter, and full of grace.